Welcome to Chain Reaction, the Foreign Policy Research Institute's flagship network of podcast series examining the political, security, economic, and social trends shaping Europe and Eurasia. Throughout the year, we're talking with experts about developments in Russia's war in Ukraine, the new European security order, the past, present, and future of the Baltic states, Russia's political economy, and great power competition in the region. Join us each month for
Bear Market Brief.
The understanding of Russia, which is broadly as Russia as a great power that has its own special path, that has a mission and that needs a strong state, and a different path to that of the West.
I think when you look at these other industries, what you find is that there's a lot of pain built up in different parts of the Russian economy. Some of it's only going to be felt over a longer period of time.
Baltic ways.
There were the countries that when the war started, they were willing to be, those voices of moral conscience.
The continent.
I think that this conflict today proves that we are able to go past grievances and that we are able to look into the future, into the common future together.
Report in short.
This is the real Achilles heel of Putin's mobilization.
And of course, our flagship, Chain Reaction.
These two countries are interacting militarily, or have been interacting in several different conflicts, and in some cases they're on the same side, and in some cases they're not.
New episodes are available each week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. This week on Chain Reaction.
Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 put the Black Sea on the map in Washington, D.C. and Brussels. After decades of neglecting it relative to other areas in Europe like the Baltics, the US and NATO began to understand that the Black Sea region is where Russia intends to mount its challenge to European stability and the rules-based order. Romania was an early, vocal, and persistent proponent of greater US and NATO focus on the region and has emerged as one of the leaders of the drive for greater regional integration and cooperation. To discuss Bucharest's role in the region and its vision for regional security, I'm joined today on Chain Reaction by Dr. Antonia Colibasanu, a senior geopolitical analyst and chief operating officer at Geopolitical Futures. In her latest book, 2022, The Geoeconomic Roundabout, she discusses the concerns that the new global economic war brings forth, which were in the making well before the war in Ukraine started. Antonia is also a lecturer on international relations at the Romanian National University of Political Studies and Public Administration, and an associate senior expert with the New Strategy Center in Bucharest. Prior to joining Geopolitical Futures in 2016 as a senior analyst, Dr. Colibasanu spent more than 10 years with Stratfor in various positions, including as partner for Europe and vice president for international marketing. She's a trainer on geopolitics for the European Affairs program at the Romanian European Institute. Among other academic credentials, she holds a doctorate in international business and economics from Bucharest Academy of Economic Studies, where her thesis focused on country risk analysis and investment decision-making processes within transnational companies. Antonia, thank you for joining me today on Chain Reaction.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Romania has emerged as a leader among regional states in encouraging a greater U.S. role in the Black Sea security. What prompted Romania's emergence in this role?
The obvious answer is the reality of the war in Ukraine. However, that would be an incomplete answer because Romania's strategy to get the U.S. more involved in the Black Sea region dates back to the moment that Romania signed a strategic partnership with the U.S. And simply put, it was the geopolitical imperative of Romania to do so because it regards Russia to be a threat, the most important threat to its own security and the most important threat to the Black Sea region. And that vision basically set Romania's action for the last decade. Now, basically, Romania is very much worried about Russia in the Black Sea region because the Black Sea itself is not it does not have international waters. That basically means that the Black Sea is a closed sea. And what I mean by that is that only the coastal countries have access to the sea itself. They can basically plan for military drills. They can, extract resources from the sea. and they can obviously manage the shipping routes and everything else. Now, with regards to the shipping routes and the military opening of the Black Sea, Turkey is a key player, and Turkey is also a NATO member and the partner of the US in the region. However, Turkey is also a resurgent power. So, bottom line, Romania wanted and wants to get the US to signal that it wants to be more present in the Black Sea with regards to supporting Romania in defending the coastline, with regards to getting more involved with securing the so-called corridor that allows now, for instance, to ship Ukrainian goods to the world, but also have a political posture that basically tells everyone in the region that the US has an interest and therefore can show that it balances off Russia. So it's sort of a security guarantee, if you like.
That was very informative and comprehensive. So I do want to pull on one thread here as a follow-up. You mentioned that only the Black Sea coastal or littoral states, that they have a certain set of rights that non-Black Sea states don't. So those are Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, right? The 6 states with Black Sea coastline. What rights do they have that other states don't? And then those are, if I understand, and you sort of obliquely mentioned this, those are governed through the Montreux Convention, which gives Turkey special powers in the Black Sea. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the coastal countries basically have exclusive economic zones in the Black Sea proper. That makes them pretty much a sort of an owner's quote unquote of a part of the Black Sea that they can exploit, that they can use in terms of commercial shipping, in terms of energy resources, and so on. And obviously, they may also plan for, let's say, specific military drills in the Black Sea proper by calling military drills, exercises whenever they want. And that is under international law, of course. It is not something that the Montreux Convention is actually having to do with. Now, Turkey has the more powers than any other state because actually Turkey manages the straits into the Black Sea. And that is the main strait, Bosphorus Strait, that is allowing passage from the Mediterranean into the Black Sea. Now, in very basic words, the Montreux Convention gives Turkey the ability to basically say who enters and who doesn't enter the Black Sea in order to make sure that it keeps the gate safe for commercial shipping. So Turkey is a sort of a gatekeeper, and that is the primary function of the Montreux Convention. Now, because there is no international water, you may not have countries like the US, even if the US is a partner, is a strategic partner of countries like Romania and Turkey. The US doesn't get into the Black Sea whenever it wants. Turkey needs to give passage. And this is more of a diplomatic element. And before the war, it was really something that it was easy to do. There were exercises planned through NATO in the Black Sea proper, and it was easy to get in. Once the war started, Turkey basically said, well, we need the sea to work for commercial shipping, and therefore we really do not need to have military ships in the sea. However, as we all know, Russia does have military ships in the sea and is using its right to call military drills even at this moment in the Black Sea, because it is a coastal country. And since it took Crimea, it actually has half of what Ukraine had as an economic exclusive zone. So once Crimea became Russia, basically Russia has increased its power in the Black Sea.
One thing you said, actually, I want to follow up on, and you said it a couple of times, that is there are no international waters in the Black Sea. So that means then, if I understand correctly, that any ship in the Black Sea is sailing in someone's territorial waters, the territorial waters of one of the 6 coastal states. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the territorial waters are also the exclusive economic zones. It's pretty much the same wording, it's equal there.
And so that means a ship, whether a commercial ship or a warship sailing in the Black Sea, whether from a coastal state or having come into the Black Sea with Turkey's permission through the Montreux Convention, needs permission to be everywhere it is in the Black Sea, right? It needs permission from one of the coastal states to be in its EEZ or territorial waters.
With the exception of the military drills. So whenever a coastal country says it wants to have military exercises in the Black Sea, it just announces the other coastal countries, and under international law, it is able to actually have military drill. Now, this is debated at the moment because this is basically what Russia has done and is doing in the Black Sea for its own interest. But apparently, and I'm not a legal expert on this matter. I'm just a geopolitical analyst. But apparently, you are allowed to call for military drills, and all coastal states are basically given the nod because international law.
Right. And I've seen, you mentioned the Russians have been doing a lot of this lately since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started in February of last year. They've been announcing these drills, which are really maritime combat operations, right? And that's taken them into the territorial waters, certainly of Ukraine, but probably other Black Sea coastal states.
That is correct. And that's actually something that Russia has done more since it took Crimea. So, for instance, a year before they started the invasion, there were more military drills being called very close to Romania's and Ukraine coastal territory, or even within the Romanian and the Ukrainian coastal territory, just to probably check the waters and see what is going on the coast. But also because Russia has done a lot of hybrid warfare in terms of, jamming, trying to push through all kinds of new routes for commercial shipping in the area, because once you have a territory within the Black Sea that is being used for a military drill, obviously you're not going to be able to have the same route for commercial shipping, right? So all ships will need to find some other routes, which is something that is not necessarily the most pleasant thing for commercial shippers in the Black Sea.
Right. So what you've described, Antonia, is the Black Sea is a pretty difficult and maybe contested space for both naval maneuver and for commercial shipping. So what would Romania's vision be for the Black Sea region, for regional security and stability? What role would it like the U.S. to play in achieving that vision?
Well, that is a very interesting and complex question. So I'm by no means a Romanian official, so my words are only from what I see as a geopolitical analyst and pretty much as a Romanian that is concerned about her own country. That said, I believe that considering Romania's prospects for energy projects in the Black Sea, it needs to make sure that those projects, those investments are being secured. And obviously, that is something that it discusses with the U.S. and that it regards highly in the U.S. partnership that it currently has with regards to military equipment that is needed for securing investment in the coastal waters. Now, besides that, and this is like a long-term element that is being talked about and has been talked about since the war in Ukraine has started, and even before the war in Ukraine has started. Now, for the time being, Romania is looking at the U.S. signaling, as I said, politically, that it is interested in the Black Sea. It is interested in playing a role in the Black Sea alongside with its NATO partners. And that is why it supported the Black Sea strategy that the U.S. is now talking about in Washington. So basically, that is the one political element that will drive more engagement with regards to how Romania is looking at helping Ukraine from NATO perspective, how the new corridors are going to look like in the Black Sea. And that this is a major question also for the long term, but a very important one for the short and medium term, considering that right now we have a very much a risky sea when it comes to commercial shipping. And the ports of Constanța in Romania are pretty much congested due to the fact that Russia pulled out of the grain deal. And we need to find ways to accommodate that trade somehow. So bottom line, I think we are going with, the political element that the Black Sea Strategy Act is talking about, the economic element that is talking about, okay, how do we deal with the new corridors? How do we deal with the shipping routes? But also very important for the long term, how do we secure the coast? And this, I believe, is the end goal of what Romania has started to talk in Washington. This is basically the key that all this discussion about the Black Sea strategy is about, because this signals also to Russia, but also to other countries that are not necessarily aligned, countries in the South Caucasus, even Turkey as a resurgent power and a NATO member, to basically stand with the West and not be drawn by Russia.
Right. So you mentioned a couple of things actually that I want to pursue. One was a couple of times you mentioned the U.S. Black Sea Strategy and Black Sea Security Act. So just for listeners, the Black Sea Security Act is a law that's been floating around in Congress for the better part of a year. Although it hasn't been passed in full, parts of it have been passed in other legislation. And one of the parts of it that was passed in the law that funds the State Department, overseas operations, required state to submit a strategy to Congress by June of this year, which it did. So that strategy is not yet public, but the State Department has submitted a strategy for Black Sea security to Congress. Hopefully that will be public soon. And everybody, Romania as well, will get a glimpse into what the U.S. sees as its role in the Black Sea and its strategic goals for the region. The other thing I wanted to follow up on that you said, Antonio, you mentioned the grain deal. So as we all know, over the winter, Russia attacked Ukrainian energy infrastructure to try to destroy Ukraine's energy grid. That largely failed. This summer, it switched tactics. It pulled out of the grain deal and has been attacking Ukrainian export infrastructure, ports and grain silos and storage facilities, to include those on the Danube River very close to Romania. So I wanted to ask you, what's your assessment of this new Russian strategy to try to cripple the Ukrainian economy? How successful has it been? And what can we do about it? What can Ukraine's Western partners do to try to make sure this strategy is not successful?
Right. So Russia basically is following a strategy for the goal of retaking Kiev. And that needs to stay with us, because if we only look at what is going on the field, we are going to basically miss why Russia is attacking the energy infrastructure, why Russia is attacking the port infrastructure. The economy of a country has to do with social stability. And Russia's bet is that if the kinetic warfare is not successful, then for the long term, economic warfare coupled with a kinetic warfare that is attacking pretty much all there is for Ukraine's economy will have a very high impact on the social stability of a country that will have to recover after the war. So bottom line, it is betting that there will not be support, or there will be diminishing support for Kiev to stand by the West, even if Russia is not successful in getting advances on the field. And that is very important for us, the West, to understand, I believe, because if we are talking about the Ukraine reconstruction, we need to realize that we are actually discussing about the society of Ukraine and how this is going to look like after its economy is pretty much collapsed. Now, with regards to what Russia could do next in terms of attacking the economy, I don't see there is much else that is left, because if the coastal side of the Black Sea is pretty much terminated, which is not the case right now, but this is the goal of Russia. This is what appears to be the goal of Russia in attacking the port infrastructure. Right when you no longer have the ability to send your product out, and considering that very much of that product is export related right now, because we are talking agriculture, which is pretty much what Ukraine can produce, considering the industrial side is on the eastern side of the country. We are talking about Kiev not having internal support for anything. So that I believe is the goal that Moscow is taking here.
You made a great point there, Antonia, and that is Russia's strategic objectives haven't changed, right? You said initially it was the fall of Kyiv, and they still envisioned the fall of Kyiv, but just in a different way. So one way to look at strategy is ends, ways, and means. Ends being your objective, ways being the things that you do to achieve those objectives, and the means being the resources that you use in certain ways to achieve your objectives, right? So I think your point is that Russia's ends have not changed. It's still the collapse of Ukraine, change of the government, but the ways and means have, instead of a ground campaign to seize Kiev and depose the government, it's a campaign waged with different resources, with different means, with missiles, with drones, against Ukraine's economic lifeblood, against either the energy infrastructure or its export infrastructure. And the idea is then to, like you said, to destroy social stability, destroy Ukraine's will to fight, and win using other means in other ways, but to achieve the same ends or the same objectives. So what can we do in the West to prevent that? To prevent Russia from achieving its objective?
Well, apart from supporting Ukraine militarily, I believe that the most important thing that we should do is provide a sense of an example for Ukraine. The West is an alternative to Russia, or this is basically what we should provide to Ukraine. So another goal that Russia has is to destroy the Western unity. And that is, the other goal that the Ukrainian war has on the background. Basically, if we stand united in NATO and in the EU, that is the political element that is very much important for providing Ukraine the trust that there is something out there that is stable. More than that, we are providing a political system example that is democracy, right? So if Russia's goal is long-term and the attacks are only the means to provide for the end goal, we also need to think that Russia is not going to stop just because the kinetic war is going to stop. It will likely continue, and even if it will not use drones, it will use other tactics against the Ukrainian economy and against the Ukrainian political stability. So on the long term, the democratic values that we have in the West need to be sustained in the West for providing that example and that ideal for Ukraine. And that is essential also for Ukraine reconstruction that will take, or that is actually started, but will likely take on after the war is over, with a more social dimension and a more political dimension, because we are talking about post-war reconstruction and post-conflict management. And all this has to do with the way that we in the West understand our own goal in supporting Ukraine and standing united by Ukraine to support Kiev.
Yeah, so thank you for that answer, Antonia. And yeah, one thing I actually didn't mention, but you did in your answer there, is that the Russian strategy in Ukraine maybe as we've been describing it, but you brought up a critical point in that there's also an external component to the strategy where the Kremlin understands that one of the centers of gravity, or maybe the center of gravity for Ukraine, its continued ability to fight, is the support of its Western partners. And so you and I aren't the first people to say this. People have been saying it for a while, but Putin's theory of victory now appears to be to wait the West out and to let Western will and patience erode. And he believes that He's in this for the long game, and we don't have the patience or just the stamina to stay with him. So how big a risk do you see that?
I believe that as we are heading into a year full of elections in Europe, it is pretty risky out there. This is also because Russia understands very well the European system and the Western system in general. So the whole strategy for Ukraine was first born with the strategy for Europe, or is tied with Russia's strategy for Europe. And that had to do with building dependencies that go beyond the economic dependency on energy sources and goes into the political ties that Russia has created for years in Europe. We will see many debates in the political elections that are coming up about the war in Ukraine, and not because we are going to see a very open discussion about what we can do and what are the risks related to what we will do in Ukraine, but because there will be a lot of influence from Russia. It knows how to do this. It did it. It basically selected all kinds of narratives in the past with the migration crisis, with the financial crisis in 2008, 2010 in Europe, and so on. So Russia is not new to European politics in particular. Therefore, we will see a very interesting year, but I will say that it is risky for us.
Yeah, and let's hope we find ways to manage or mitigate that risk. And of course, you mentioned Europe as a European, but I'm sitting back here in the United States where we just had the first debate in the Republican primary season last night. So we have an election here too next November of 2024. So it's going to be an interesting year all around inside the countries that have been so critical to Ukraine's support so far. And let's hope we can keep this what really has been a remarkable unified effort among NATO and even some non-NATO European countries and Western countries to support Ukraine. So let me zoom out a little bit from the Black Sea and ask you one last question. The Three Seas Initiative Summit is going to be held in Bucharest at the beginning of September. So this initiative was launched a few years ago, and it's aimed at boosting connectivity, facilitating real convergence among EU member states in Central and Eastern Europe. So how is this process going? How successful has it been so far? And how is it set to develop considering the war in Ukraine?
This initiative is very much linked to what we are talking about when we are talking about unity. It is the only initiative that I know that is supported by both US and the European Union, and that has a business flavor, meaning the US has been attracted to this initiative in particular because there were the business purposes that were pretty much following the strategy of creating new infrastructure, creating interconnectivity between the three seas, which are the Baltic Sea, the Black Sea, and the Adriatic Sea. And obviously, with the new containment line, NATO containment line being moved east now in between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, this is very much important for NATO in terms of being able to coordinate all operations. The EU, on the other hand, has been interested in supporting this because of the need of further integration. So when we are looking at the countries that are part of the Three Seas initiative, we're basically looking at Eastern Europe, Central Europe, and Southern Europe. So this is new territory for the European Union. It is the newest European territory in political terms. This is the East that joined the West after the Cold War ended. And obviously, there are still many differences, not only in the way that the two sides see the world, the West and the East, but also in economic development terms, in convergence. So this is why Brussels was very much interested in supporting this. However, because it is business driven, the politics of the initiative are minimal. which means that not only that there were a lot of statements being done, but there was little being done so far. So there is the momentum of having this accelerated because of Ukraine. And I believe that with the Ukraine reconstruction, the states and the business people in the region are very hopeful that they will find ways to integrate projects and to work so that there is new infrastructure being built. But at the same time, if we are looking back, there was minimal progress being done. So the main question is, again, how united are we? How much of our business goals are driving strategy? And how much is that business goal related to the political goal? And in many ways, this is also a test for us. But the way that I'm seeing it developing right now, and the emphasis that all the countries in the region are putting on this 3Cs initiative is telling, in the sense that everyone wants more done. Everyone is willing to give in, and urgently, because we are very much in difficulty because of the Ukraine war, and we see the lack of infrastructure. We see what that did to us. So it's more than just talking the good talk. Now it is, what do we do? How do we walk the talk? Because we really need to do that. I believe that's a mindset change there that has happened, at least from what I'm seeing in the local media and the local debates in Europe. That's pretty much the sense that I'm getting.
Yeah, so let's hope that the 3Cs initiative as an economic organization can be married up with political will on the part of not only its members, but all of Ukraine's partners, because you mentioned this earlier, the rebuilding of Ukraine is going to be a massive undertaking when this war ends, and it will someday. But I would argue, and I think you probably agree, you can let me know, but I think the rebuilding of Ukraine, its success economically and its reintegration into not only the Black Sea region, but the larger European economy is critical to its success, the success of the Black Sea region, and the success of the larger Euro-Atlantic community.
That is very true. And the challenge is pretty high. But I believe that if we stick together, we will make it happen. So, yes, difficult times ahead, but it's up to us to make it work somehow.
Right. And yet unity is the theme that you and I, it's come up several times, right, as we've been talking here. And I think it's so critical. And I think you can argue that the Western countries have done a pretty good job so far in managing or in cementing and perpetuating the unity among them in terms of support for Ukraine. But we'll see how that develops going forward in this year of elections, 2023, 2024. So, Antonia, this has been a fascinating discussion for me. I've really learned a lot. And I thank you very much for joining me today on Chain Reaction.
Thank you very much. I've also learned very much. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to Chain Reaction, a podcast of the Foreign Policy Research Institute, examining the political, security, economic, and social trends shaping Europe and Eurasia. Throughout the year, we're talking with experts about developments in Russia's war in Ukraine, the new European security order, the past, present, and future of the Baltic states, Russia's political economy, and great power competition in the region. Note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of FPRI. I'm your host, Dr. Bob Hamilton, Head of Eurasia Research at FPRI. Visit us at fpri.org for more on today's topic and many others in the world of foreign policy and national security. Thanks for listening. See you soon.